The coronavirus pandemic has sent supply chains into a tailspin. First, it was toilet paper. Then it was ketchup packets, gnomes, semiconductors. Now, it's rubber.
Multiple factors are leading to a major rubber shortage around the world.
This could be getting a lot worse. We could be on the cusp of a rubber apocalypse.
To ensure an uninterrupted supply of natural rubber from the few regions of the world which grow it is a major concern of every world power, most of all the United States.
The global natural rubber market was valued at nearly $40 billion in 2020, but
demand for rubber is really continuing to increase.
One analysis predicts the rubber market could be worth nearly $68.5 billion by 2026. Rubber is a critical raw material. Just think, anytime you're going anywhere, by car, plane, or even by foot, you're using rubber. But rubber is also used in your personal protective equipment, like gloves and masks, like the elastics that stretch behind your ears. Plus, it's used in literal rubber bands. And then there are hair ties, underwear, erasers, condoms, and more. Rubber ducks, though, those are plastic. It's used in more than 40,000 commercial products.
You could call it a shortage. Some people are referring to it more as a supply chain disruption.
Rubber producers are working against all odds. Climate change, disease, both COVID and a destructive fungus, not to mention the fight for shipping containers. So, let's break down what exactly this all means for the rubber shortage. Before the coronavirus struck, the rubber industry faced challenges. But to start, here's how rubber is made. Well, natural rubber anyway. It's kind of like how you would tap a tree for maple syrup. Certain trees can be tapped for liquid sap, also known as latex. Latex is gathered from the trees by making a cut in the bark, collecting the runny sap in cups.
By mid-morning, the workers are ready to begin their collection.
It's called the Hevea brasiliensis, and as the name suggests, is a tree that is originary of South America.
Ammonia is added to keep the sap from solidifying. Then acid is added in a process called coagulation to extract the rubber. A few hours later, the mixture goes through rollers to remove excess water, then layers of rubber are hung over racks to dry for a couple of days before being folded into bales for processing. There are synthetic rubbers.
America's synthetic rubber problem nears a solution.
But sometimes it can't be swapped out for the real thing because of natural rubber's particular properties. Take airplane tires as an example. Gotta be 100% natural rubber. And most natural rubber doesn't come from the US, not even North America. In fact, most of the world's natural rubber, 90% of it, comes from
Southeast Asia, Thailand specifically, the largest producer.
The US imported $140 million worth of natural rubber in March 2021 alone. Most of that rubber comes from independent farmers in Southeast Asia, also known as smallholders.
85% of the natural rubber that we have in the world today is produced by smallholders. So these are families that work on lands that are usually 1 to 2 hectares in size. This means they have 1 to 2 soccer or football fields.
Those families of farmers are at war with diseases destroying the crops.
Fungus affecting rubber-producing plants has destroyed 10% of global supply.
But Pestalotiopsis and Neophysococcus, the trees are only like 8 feet apart, and they're all clones. So there's very little genetic diversity. So it's a bunch of identical twins for miles on end. So of course, if one gets a bad disease, they're all susceptible to it. There's no immunity. It's a desperately sensitive system.
And farmers face the impacts of climate change on their business.
Extreme weather events last year had a significant impact on that loss in production. But if you've got major floods, you're going to kill your trees. You've got tsunamis and typhoons. Again, major issues on supply.
Farmers have to be strategic about planting their crops.
You have to plant a tree, and that tree takes 4 to 7 years to mature before you can get rubber out of it. So if there's not enough careful planning and enough resources that are put into replanting, then we see what we've seen in the past years, that you have a cyclical nature in the availability of rubber. So basically, the prices are low, right? What happens is that people don't plant because it seems that there's no business case for rubber. At a certain point, demand keeps increasing up to a point where prices start picking up and people start planting rubber a lot. But that rubber doesn't come into fruition until 4 to 7 years after that. And when it comes into the market, then you have a slump in prices.
This causes rubber farmers to face unreliable income streams. That makes it hard to afford resources to fight off those diseases.
Rubber tappers are only being paid like $2 to $6 a day. That's not a living wage. There was no money left to improve the health of the plants. There's no money left for fertilizers or for proper tree maintenance.
And then COVID-19 scrambles the supply chain even further. Now, demand for rubber is spiking. Part of the reason? Car tires.
So tires is by far the largest consumer of natural rubber. But what really matters is how much are people using tires. With food deliveries and, well, not just food, but goods in general, we are using tires more and more.
Manufacturers have told CNBC that they haven't been affected yet.
Tire maker Goodyear telling CNBC, we are not currently experiencing supply limitations.
I got the semi thing already going, but how about rubber? We got enough?
Yeah, Jim, the short answer is we do. We never have had a problem of getting supply of that natural rubber. So it's something that's always out there, a lot of speculation going on. I can never say never about something that could happen to Southeast Asian rubber trees.
That we haven't been affected by this obviously very, very difficult overall global supply chain disruption.
And now shipping containers are hard to come by.
We're hearing that rubber is increasingly hard to import for some industries. So what's the problem here? Well, it's multiple factors. A lack of shipping containers, bottleneck caused by the Suez Canal, and a recent surge in demand from end users.
Supply chains are very much at capacity at the moment during COVID. The sheer fact that because people are at home and the way the things are working, the shipment of goods has increased.
And since most rubber comes from Thailand, 15,000 miles away, the shipping delays have caused businesses to find alternative routes.
Consumers who buy direct in Southeast Asia have been utilizing air transport to bring natural rubber those 15,000 miles from Southeast Asia to the United States.
Plus, supply problems can be traced to processing plants, which are also known as OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. Some OEMs shut down due to COVID outbreaks.
Consumer element of the business, especially because of the OEMs, of course, shutting down significantly in 2020, but that's also bouncing back quite well.
Now, industrial companies are thinking about rubber innovation.
I think our goal also in the mid and long term is to continue to invest in technology, also to put in parallel other way of synthetic rubber or other ways of really coping with some potential disruption.
Not just companies, but the Biden administration too.
Very much into this critical materials supply chain security. And it's really US security, it's homeland security.
Of all critical and strategic materials, rubber is the one which presents the greatest threat to the safety of our nation.
We don't have rubber, we have no security.
Besides security, the U.S. simply also has to meet demand.
Some scientists see opportunity here. Dr. Cornish at Ohio State University is developing rubber from plants. She's still 2 to 3 years away from getting this to market, though.
And the goal is to make the US initially independent, so that they actually have our own natural rubber supply in the States. And so we're not having to import it all from the other side of the world all the time.
Cornish and her team, both at her startup and at Ohio State, are working on sustainable solutions to growing rubber in the U.S. Turns out, rubber is harvestable from dandelions.
Just broke that root. You see the latex coming out of the roots there? System that I developed at the university, where you can grow the dandelions hydroponically, cut the roots off, grow them back down, cut them off, grow them back down, cut them off, and you get a very highly productive system for rubber production.
But for the U.S. to be a real rubber player, it'll take a lot of time, commitment, and cash.
Somebody has to come up with the money to build that vertical farm. And those things really expensive. It's like $1 billion for a 10-acre farm, vertical farm with 12 layers.
There also needs to be processing plants. And Cornish says it'll take a $40 million investment to make that first processing plant. Until rubber innovations hit the market, the U.S., and the rest of the world for that matter, will stay dependent on Southeast Asia for natural rubber.
The issue is who's gonna have to bear the cost of this. And my hope is that we are not gonna see the farmers paying the cost of these disruptions.
The industry has got to understand that prices are going to go up, but that for the health of the industry, They need to go up and stay up.
We really put our efforts to ensure that the farmers that are producing these commodities, that we support these farmers in their countries to be able to carry out this work in a dignified way and to ensure that they can make a decent living out of the work that they're doing to producing these commodities that are so important for keeping our standards of living in the countries where we can benefit from the wealth that we have.